Like what we're doing, using the history to reinvent Toano, because it has a rich history here, and it's just been forgotten. When that road came through and took everything down, Toano was forgotten about. So, and I'm right here in the middle of it, and I see it, and I just want to make it better, so we're going to give it a try.
Virginia, the place of the earliest English settlements in North America and birth state of 8 U.S. presidents, has a long and exciting history. Writers have been reviewing the early years of Virginia for centuries, and so warranted. Although history has built a storybook of information about Jamestown, Williamsburg, Richmond, and other significant areas within the state, not much attention has been given to Virginia's small towns until recently. With the emergence of small-town revitalization in the 21st century, the town of Toano, located 10 miles west of colonial Williamsburg in historic James City County, is now a story worth examining. This land area was along the stage route between Williamsburg and Richmond. In the mid-1700s, John Lewis opened an ordinary at the intersection of Old Stage Road and Old Forge Road, offering meals and lodging. This ordinary was later sold to Benjamin Fox and was burned to the ground during the American Revolution. Later, when the French Army's wagon train passed by, Alexander Berthier wrote that 2 old chimneys stood here at the fork of the road. In 1781, Samuel DeWitt, George Washington's cartographer, noted the site of the burnt brick ordinary on one of his maps. This crossroads became known as Burnt Ordinary. Elements of Lafayette's army, camped 2 miles south of here, had historic Chickahominy Church. This area was referred to as Burnt Ordinary for the next century. The area grew as a hub of trading activity for the county in the 1800s and became the gateway for the development of northern James City County. After the Civil War, shipping from this area was still done mainly by way of the Chickahominy and James Rivers. In 1881, the Chesapeake and Ohio Railroad laid tracks from Richmond to Newport News, and these tracks came directly through the area of Burnt Ordinary. A depot and water tank were built on the corner of Chesapeake Avenue and Church Lane. Workers laying these tracks, who had previously worked in the western states, noticed the land started going uphill at Windsor Shades, 30 miles east of Richmond. This rising grade continued through Burnt Ordinary. They put up a sign indicating that this was a Toano, a Paiute Indian word meaning high ground. The name stuck, and in 1885, a Richmond Times-Dispatch article reported a robbery at Slater's store in Toano. With the railroad as the new main shipping source, getting commodities to market became much more efficient. Farming and logging increased dramatically as Toano Station on Chesapeake Avenue attracted new trade to the area. By the late 1890s, the village of Toano had become a thriving farming community. The town had 2 operating hotels and local stores offering a variety of goods and supplies for the hotels and guests who stayed there. In the early 20th century, Toano was competitive with Williamsburg as a growth community. By 1905, having a train cross Route 60 and come through the center of town became problematic. The C&O began buying property to redirect the trains around the growing village. In 1908, the railroad moved tracks and relocated Toano's train station from Chesapeake Avenue to Depot Street. There was extraordinary pride within this community as men devoted much time and money toward improving their town. The railroad created this market village, and by 1910, Toano had 3 hotels, a drugstore, livery stables, general merchandise stores, 2 banks, a canning factory, a barrel factory, a newspaper, and a high school. Toano High School was opened in 1908 and was the envy of those in surrounding counties and Williamsburg. The 3-story brick school stayed in operation until 1955. There were a total of 570 students who graduated over its 45-year existence in the county.
Toano High School was built in 2 pieces.
Yeah.
At first, it was just 4 rooms downstairs and 4 rooms upstairs. And then they added the house. They just had a grade school there for a long time.
The key to the county's farming success proved to be Irish potatoes. From 1890 until the 1920s, potatoes brought prosperity to Toano. The largest and most successful potato operation was owned by C.C. Branch, whose farm was on Forge Road.
And some of the boys that age used to get gravel potatoes for him. They had big barrels like this, and Hammond had a picture of them in a potato patch with the big barrels.
He operated that barrel factory up there for Kerry. One that was up on Church Street.
To maintain his edge on the market, he built a barrel factory on Church Lane. His total operation employed 80 local workers. 75 mules worked his fields. It was the largest business between Richmond and Newport News. Branch also persuaded the C&O Railroad to build a rail siding for his shipments. A large warehouse known to locals as the Potato House was constructed on Chesapeake Avenue.
And that potato house was built out of buildings they tore down after World War I. And they must have gotten plenty of lumber. It was triple walled. All of it was, they didn't have any tongue and groove stuff or plywood. They just used lumber. They just had plenty of lumber and they used it. It was a well-built old house.
Cary Branch became Potato King of the state of Virginia and James City County's first self-made millionaire. Toano continued through the Depression years, but growth stagnated. Although Virginia was not as economically stressed as other areas in the country during the 1930s, it still felt the strain in a big way, and many businesses failed. Things began to improve after World War II, and in 1946, Bertrand and Tridi Getty sold land to the Sheldon family to open a lumber business. This was perfect timing for the Sheldons, as the post-war housing boom provided them ample trade.
Yeah, Sheldon Lumber Company came here right after the war was a boom to Toano, I tell you.
Yeah.
The Wedgwood Playhouse was opened in 1963 and continued productions into the 1970s. Wedgwood was a 300-seat, pay-for-performance theater that was set up in the abandoned canning factory in Toano. Over its 10 years, the company presented more than 70 theatrical productions. State Route 60, going directly through the town of Toano, was widened to 4 lanes starting in 1966. Several significant buildings were torn down on the south side of Toano's main corridor to make room for these highway improvements. A town that was once full of optimism had become an aged community. Grandchildren of those who once had great vision for this Virginia town were not able to see it in the same light. The old Toano of the early 20th century was gone from the landscape. There seemed little left of the community spirit from 60 years earlier, and increasingly, the town's people lost focus of what had once made their village special.
happened. Wasn't that
Oh,
terrible?
I hated it.
Yeah.
They took the drugstore and L.T. Richardson's grocery store, and they took L.T.'s kind of a restaurant. Had a Nickelodeon in there you could play, and we used to come down from school, walk down from school, and play the Nickelodeon, and the girls would dance. Kind of have fun.
Yeah.
Jack Ray, who grew up in 50s and 60s Toano, thinks his hometown is an ideal candidate for revitalization. He has a vision of rebirth for the village. Jack's family lived here from the early 1900s through the 1970s. In 2003, brothers Jack and Jeff, who both currently live in Charlottesville, purchased their ancestral home on Chesapeake Avenue in the center of Toano. Their grandfather, W.C. Martin, raised his family here and operated Martin's General Merchandise from 1911 through 1957. This store building is now a business called Everything Vintage. In July of 2012, Jack and Jeff saw an opportunity when a for sale sign went up on a residential parcel of Chesapeake Avenue, including 80 feet of road frontage on Route 60. If they could only acquire the rest of the frontage, they would have enough length and depth to include adequate rear parking for a revitalization project. This additional piece was owned by Gil Granger, former mayor of Williamsburg, and was not for sale. Jack called on an old friend, Bobby Hornsby, who was able to persuade Granger to sell. Although on less than 2 acres, when combined the lots run from Church Lane to the BP gas station. This property is in the heart of Toano's historic district. Across the street from the 1906 Old Martin Store building, the 1903 Bank building, and the Masonic Lodge. It was the original site of Toano's first depot, the Potato House, and the Toano Drug Company, later Barksdale's Drug Store. This spot is where a 1908 Virginia Gazette article speaks of a vibrant and bustling village of stores. The Rays believe that this is where the revitalization of Toano should begin, right where it all started. Local civil engineer and friend Arch Marston with AES introduced the Rays to John Hopke, a Williamsburg architect. Together they created a concept for Toano Station, the name of the new project. Using historic photos, the old Toano Depot will be replicated on its original Chesapeake Avenue site. A version of the Potato House will anchor one corner, and Barksdale's Drug Store will anchor the opposite corner. In between these new buildings will be retail shops with second-floor offices or apartments. Separating the 3 structures will be outdoor dining, communal gathering areas, as well as easy access from the rear parking lot to the storefronts. On-street parking is also a part of the proposed development. All architecture will be inspired by Toano's original buildings of the early 20th century, featuring large storefront display windows. Recently, a 1902 postcard captioned "A General View of Toano" surfaced. It depicts the original depot and water tank on Chesapeake Avenue. There's a single tree on this postcard that looks like an existing one still at the site. The Rays contacted the New Kent Forestry Department, who came out and took a core sample to age this tree. They determined it to be a 231-year-old loblolly pine, dating back to 1781. It will be saved and incorporated into the project. In 2004 and 2005, locals and county officials met with the Renaissance Group, a Charlottesville consulting firm that formed a foundation for revitalization. Their motto is "Cities That Work," and these efforts led to the James City County Board of Supervisors adopting the Toano Design Guidelines and Streetscape Study in 2006. Among the principles in this study, highlight and honor history, Encourage growth that enhances unique small-town character. Enhance pedestrian bicycle environment while slowing vehicular traffic. Improve streetscapes to create a sense of place. Hopefully, the Rays will attract tenants who want to be a part of the revitalization of an old railroad town. Think of the possible business opportunities. A restaurant, craft beer facility, coffee house, bakery, small grocery, dress shop, art or bookstore, professional offices of all types. There are other properties for sale along the corridor lying dormant, waiting to become part of this revitalization. Imagine this Virginia town as it was in the past. To follow the progress of this exciting new adventure, view 3D images of the new buildings, and browse historical facts and photos, please visit toanostation.com.